Have you been thinking about trying realism? I may have a few tips for you.
Hello, Shannon Rowe Jackson here, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some tips that I have found helpful for doing realism. When I first started filming this, my intention was to do a tutorial on how to draw the snake in graphite, but I encountered a lot of technical difficulties, so I was not able to film the entire process. So I decided that this would probably be a good time to just talk about realism in general and some of the things that I have found over the years that have helped me. My first step is to start small. And what I mean by this is if you want to work on, say you want to do portraiture, practice eyes for a while, practice noses for a while, have a full-on week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks where all you're drawing is hands until you're confident enough to put it all together in a portrait. And then when you finally do decide to do a full piece, start small then too. Use a smaller canvas when you're painting or use a smaller surface. Draw just a simple thing so that you don't get overwhelmed until you're more confident in your realism skills. Number 2, when you do start working on a piece, break it down into individual sections. This will help you see the small details that you need to see, and you won't feel so overwhelmed with the whole picture. Number 3, realism is like a puzzle made up of small abstract shapes. Train your eye to look for those shapes. Most of us think of realism as a whole. We don't think of it as the fact that it's broken down into abstract. People don't think of abstract and realism as being connected, but they really are, and it's important to get those little shapes right in order for the whole picture to look correct. Number 4, do not be afraid to push your values. High contrast usually makes for a more interesting image. Do not be afraid to go dark, and do not be afraid to go light, and to use every value in between. It's just more noticeable that way. Your picture will be enlivened that way. Number 5, when starting out, if you struggle with color, work in black and white to get a feel for detail and values. And you can always glaze later if you want to. So if you do a black and white piece and later on down the line when you're more confident in it, say you did black and white in acrylic, you can always glaze over it later. Number 6, when working in color, use a value finder, or not a value finder, but a viewfinder to see what color you're working on. So if you're having a hard time figuring out the exact skin tone or what color is in that shadow, you just take a white piece of paper, punch a hole in it, put the hole over your reference, and it's going to help you to see that color for what it actually is. Because depending on what kind of lighting is around or what other colors are around the color, it may be totally different than what you thought. Something red could actually technically be purple in shadow. So that's a tip that I think is great for finding colors. Number 7, speaking of identifying color, shadows are never black. And even in black and white pictures, you're going to have some gradient there. It's never going to be fully black. So when you're working, again, if you're working in color, if you're having a hard time identifying what's actually in that shadow, use your viewfinder. And do not do flat black because it will make your image look flat. Number 8, experiment with your chosen medium before you dive into realism. So say you're new to acrylic, play around with it a lot more. Do glazes, practice blending, practice layering before you jump into something that you know is going to be highly detailed. Read books about it, watch tutorials, know your medium as much as you can. Number 9, do not be afraid to ruin it. Fear is the biggest holdback when it comes to anything in life, really, but with art, it's just the same. Do not let the fear of ruining a piece stop you from pushing your own boundaries. We all have pieces that we dislike, but you will learn from those pieces. Even if the piece seems like a disaster to you, you will learn from it. So it's never a waste of time. Do not be afraid to try. And number 10, and this is the biggest one, realism takes time, both to develop the skill and when working on an individual piece. It's important to be patient with yourself. None of us get there overnight. None of us are instantly able to make something photorealistic. It all takes time. So those are my tips for realism, and I hope that they help you out. The piece that I was just working on was graphite done on ampersand artist panel. It was their smooth artist panel. And I thought it would be a great piece in the background for realism, since it was a realism piece. Thank you for watching. Bye.